Los Angeles, the Mount Street area, a quiet, upscale neighborhood lined with expensive private mansions, hidden from the street behind tall fences and gated entrances. The night of February 14th into February 15th, 2020. The time is 1:11 a.m. The stillness of the sleeping neighborhood is suddenly shattered by piercing screams from a woman. The sounds are coming from the upper floor of a large 3-story house. On the first floor of that same home, Michael Herman jolts awake. He rents a room here, while his neighbor, Amy Harwick, lives upstairs. From above his head, Michael hears the unmistakable sounds of a struggle. Heavy objects slam into the floor. Furniture appears to be knocked over. Michael shouts toward the ceiling and the stairway, hoping his voice alone might scare off whoever is up there. But the noise doesn't stop. Realizing he is unarmed and unable to safely go upstairs, Michael makes a split-second decision to run for help. He bolts out through the back door into the inner courtyard. There's no time to search for keys to the front gate, so Michael climbs over the tall fence that surrounds the property. Once on the sidewalk, he runs from mansion to mansion, pounding on doors. But at this hour, no one answers. Finally, he spots a passerby on the street and desperately begs them to call emergency services. A patrol unit arrives at the house at 1:25 a.m. Officers are met by locked gates. Michael explains that the keys were left inside the house and he can't let them in.
So is there somebody else inside?
Yes. So I think there's.
Okay, sir, do me a favor, calm down. Other than your roommate, is there anybody else inside the house?
I don't know. No, I just heard her screaming. I sounded like she got thrown to the ground. I've been calling for her. There's windows open. He's answering nothing.
Let's get an additional unit. Yeah, I know, but... Yeah,
we're gonna go there.
Yeah, I know. 615, can I get an additional unit for some office?
Is requesting additional unit 2086 Mount Street.
Yes. I mean, I can hop the fence, but I mean, the keys are left in the house. I was in the middle of sleep.
So why is this? Why can't we get in here?
Because it's locked. Because she came home.
Listen, sir. You need to relax a little bit so that we can get all the information, okay? So how are we gonna get it? How are you planning on getting back in here?
I don't know. I guess hopping the fence.
Without hesitation, the officers climb over the fence after him. Inside the property, flashlights sweep across the yard and up toward the windows. The beam suddenly catches a body on the ground below a third-floor balcony. It's Amy Harwick. She is still alive, but her body is convulsing. What exactly happened inside the house is still unclear. Hey everyone, before we dive deeper into today's story, I just want to ask you to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. I put a lot of effort into bringing you real, true crime cases from all around the world. Only authentic stories here. Your support truly helps the channel grow, and I appreciate every bit of interaction. While doctors at the hospital later documented the time of death, the house on Mount Street was officially declared a crime scene. Police sealed off the perimeter with yellow tape and began a meticulous search of the mansion. Investigators quickly focused their attention on the third floor, where the homeowner's private rooms were located. When detectives entered the living area upstairs, they encountered a scene that ruled out any possibility of an accidental fall. The interior bore clear signs of a brief but intense struggle. In the television room, a woman's jacket and a beaded necklace lay scattered across the floor, positioned as if they had been torn away or thrown aside in a moment of panic. Inside the bedroom, a distinct kind of chaos had taken over. A handbag was overturned, its contents spilled across the carpet. Keys, cosmetics, and personal documents were strewn together, suggesting the confrontation erupted suddenly, leaving no time for the victim to react or understand what was happening. Forensic specialists paid special attention to the bed. It was made, the blanket folded back, and the sheets wrinkled, but not in the way they would be after sleep. The creases suggested that someone had been lying on top of the bedspread, fully clothed, possibly even wearing shoes, for an extended period of time. Whoever had been there appeared to be using the bedroom as a place to wait and watch. The source of the noise that woke Michael on the first floor was much higher up, inside Amy's bedroom on the third level. An examination of the balcony revealed exactly how the intruder got into the house. He didn't use the front door downstairs. The offender climbed up the exterior of the building, reached the third-floor balcony, and shattered the glass of the heavy French doors leading directly into the bedroom. Shards of glass were scattered across the floor inside the room, confirming that the impact came from outside. On the remaining doorframe and several fragments of glass, forensic specialists discovered fresh smears of blood. The logic was clear. Since the glass had been broken from the outside to gain entry, the blood did not belong to the victim. It belonged to the intruder, who had cut himself during the break-in. But the strangest discovery awaited investigators on the tiled floor of the balcony, just a few feet from the shattered door. Lying there was a syringe filled with an unknown yellowish liquid. The object looked completely out of place in the refined interior of a high-end Hollywood home. At first, responding officers considered a theory involving prohibited substances. However, this piece of evidence directly conflicted with everything else at the scene. The broken doors and signs of a struggle pointed to a forced intrusion, while the syringe suggested something entirely different. The pieces didn't fit together. To understand whose blood was on the door, and why a syringe was found at the scene, investigators needed to take a closer look at the life of the woman who lived there. Amy Harwick moved to Los Angeles from Pennsylvania in the early 2000s. Her path to success was calculated and practical. Work as a dancer and photo shoots for Playboy under the pseudonym Nicolette Novak served strictly as a financial foundation to pay for her education. Behind the glossy past was a serious academic career. Harwick earned a doctorate and, by the time of the tragedy, was a respected family therapist. She authored the best-selling book, The New Sex Bible for Women, and regularly appeared in the media as an expert. Colleagues described her as an intellectual who relied on science to genuinely help people. But one detail about Amy's lifestyle was especially important to the investigation. Harwick was deeply committed to fitness and healthy living. Those close to her stated unequivocally, she never used prohibited substances, didn't smoke, and rarely drank alcohol. The idea that the homeowner might have used a syringe herself collapsed instantly. That object had no place in her world, which meant it was brought by the person who forced their way inside. By 2018, Amy Harwick had firmly established herself among Los Angeles' elite. Her status extended far beyond a therapist's office. One clear symbol of her success was her engagement to well-known comedian and television host Drew Carey. Despite a 23-year age difference, the couple frequently appeared together at public events, drawing media attention. Even after the engagement ended, Amy and Drew remained on good terms and continued to be close friends. Harwick also used her public platform for more than personal recognition. She actively collaborated with the nonprofit organization Pineapple Support, which provides mental health assistance to workers in the adult entertainment industry. Amy spoke publicly as an advocate for women, teaching self-support techniques and how to establish personal boundaries. To an outside observer, her life appeared flawless, a steady stream of achievements, lectures, and red carpet appearances. However, while forensic teams were collecting shards of glass at the crime scene, a different kind of drama was unfolding back at the police station. Detectives were questioning two key witnesses: the neighbor, Michael Herman, who had heard the struggle, and the victim's closest friend, Robert. Investigators needed to understand the motive. The theory of a random burglary seemed weak, especially given the strange syringe found on the balcony and the clear signs that the intrusion was deliberate and targeted. Officers asked a standard but crucial question. Did Amy have an enemy or someone she feared? The answer from both men was immediate and identical. They didn't mention hypothetical burglars or dissatisfied clients. Both Michael and Robert named one specific person, someone who appeared to belong to Amy's distant past, but who, according to those close to her, had cast a long shadow over her life for years. The witnesses stated that Amy was afraid of her former boyfriend. His name was Gareth Pursehouse, and it quickly became clear that this story didn't begin on the night of the crime, but a decade earlier. To understand the scale of the threat that loomed over Amy, investigators had to go back to 2010. That was the year she met Gareth Pursehouse at a social event. At the time, he worked as a software engineer and pursued photography as a serious hobby. People around him described Gareth as loud, confident, and charismatic. The relationship moved quickly, but the charming facade soon collapsed, revealing a pattern of aggressive control. By 2011, Amy's friends were witnessing episodes of severe aggression. Gareth choked his partner, threw her to the ground, and struck her with his fists. The most disturbing incident occurred on a freeway when Pursehouse pushed Amy out of a moving car. She suffered injuries and was forced to make her way home alone in the dark. After that episode, Harwick ended the relationship. Gareth, however, refused to accept the breakup. What followed was a sustained campaign of stalking. In court documents, Amy detailed her former boyfriend's behavior. Pursehouse repeatedly trespassed onto the grounds of her residential complex. On one occasion, he smashed 10 framed photographs against her door, leaving the hallway in ruins. Gareth also sent threatening emails to Amy's friends, demanding that she be returned to him. In March of 2012, the court granted Harwick's request for a protective order. Gareth was ordered to stay at least 1,000 yards away from Amy for a period of 3 years. To protect herself emotionally, the therapist adopted the gray rock method, a strategy of offering no emotional response to an aggressor's provocations. For a time, it appeared to work. The restraining order expired in 2015, and Pursehouse vanished from view. Amy believed that chapter of her life was closed for good. 5 years of silence lowered Amy's guard, but in January 2020, a chance encounter set off an irreversible chain of events. The setting was an awards ceremony, a prestigious event within the adult entertainment industry. Harwick attended as an honored guest, an expert sexologist. In the crowded lobby of a luxury hotel in downtown Los Angeles, dressed in a knee-length black dress, she was talking with colleagues when a familiar face suddenly appeared in the crowd. Gareth Pursehouse was also at the ceremony. He was working there as an accredited photographer. In a massive city like Los Angeles, 2 former partners found themselves in the same room. When their eyes met, Gareth didn't walk past her. He headed straight toward Amy, and what began as an awkward greeting escalated within seconds into a public confrontation. Pursehouse broke down in tears. His voice shook with rage. In front of stunned onlookers, he shouted at Amy that she had ruined his life, calling her a hypocrite. What shocked people around them wasn't just the emotional outburst, but the substance of his accusations. Gareth recited, word for word, old voice messages and text messages he had sent nearly 8 years earlier. For him, the decade of separation seemed not to exist at all. He was still living in the grievances of 2012. Friends managed to separate them, but later that same evening, Gareth found Amy again. This time the conversation was quieter, but the tension remained heavy. Harwick, maintaining professional composure, tried to de-escalate the situation. She offered a polite smile, thanked him for his time, and said the words she hoped would close the door for good. "We don't have to be enemies. Amy even apologized for any pain she may have caused in the past, attempting to calm him. After that exchange, she immediately canceled all plans for the after party and went home, fully aware that an old nightmare had returned. After returning home from the incident at the ceremony, Amy did what people do when they recognize a real threat but don't yet have grounds to contact law enforcement. She documented everything. Harwick sat down at her computer and sent an email to herself. In it, she carefully recorded the timeline of the evening. "Today I was very scared. I decided to ignore him and not look in that direction. I thought maybe he wouldn't notice me." That digital record became the first step in her attempt to protect herself. The very next day, her fears were confirmed. Gareth located her current phone number through publicly available sources. He immediately texted her, referencing their conversation in the hotel lobby during the awards ceremony. Pursehouse attempted to use her politeness against her, suggesting they meet again to supposedly bring closure to their conversation. Amy responded as carefully as possible. She tried to set a boundary without provoking aggression. She wrote that it would be better for them to take space, remain civil from a distance, and live their separate lives. Gareth's reaction was instant and manipulative. He accused her of abandoning him yet again, claiming that her withdrawal represented his worst nightmare coming true. In the days that followed, the communication turned into an avalanche. Gareth sent dozens of messages. When Amy stopped responding, he switched to voicemail, leaving recordings in which he alternated between crying and begging for a meeting. Realizing that silence was no longer effective, Harwick moved into active defense. She blocked her former boyfriend's number. Then she hired professionals to install door chains and inspect the locks on her windows. For personal protection, Amy purchased pepper spray, which she began carrying with her at all times. After that surge of activity, everything went quiet. For the next 3.5 weeks, Gareth made no attempts to contact Amy. He didn't show up at her home. He didn't message her friends. Her phone stayed silent, and security cameras showed no suspicious movement. The absence of new threats created the illusion that Pursehouse had accepted rejection and stepped back. But investigators would later determine that it was during these days of silence that the plan for the final visit was taking shape. Investigators didn't waste time chasing false leads. Statements from Amy's friends, combined with surveillance footage, allowed police to move quickly. Just 13 hours after doctors officially recorded Harwick's death, a tactical unit surrounded the home of Gareth Pursehouse. The suspect was taken into custody at the location. He was charged with a first-degree crime with a special circumstance known as lying in wait, along with burglary. A search of Purshouse's residence provided detectives with critical evidence. Inside, officers found a syringe that visually matched the one discovered on the victim's balcony. This immediately linked Gareth to the crime scene, even before DNA results were available. Shortly after, the lab confirmed the biological connection. The blood found on the shattered fragments of the French doors in Amy's home belonged to Pursehouse. He had cut himself while breaking the glass to force his way inside. However, the most disturbing turn in the investigation came after federal analysts released their report on the contents of the syringe recovered at the scene. The initial assumption involving prohibited substances turned out to be wrong. Testing revealed that the syringe contained highly concentrated liquid nicotine. The dosage was lethal. This discovery completely reshaped investigators' understanding of the offender's intentions. Gareth hadn't planned a loud confrontation or a physical struggle. The presence of nicotine suggested he was preparing a quiet crime. Administering such a dose could have caused rapid cardiac failure, potentially appearing as a natural death or sudden medical incident, especially if the body had remained in bed. The scenario involving strangulation and the fall from the balcony appeared to be spontaneous, unfolding only after the victim woke up and resisted, disrupting the original plan. Pursehouse's behavior in the hours following the crime and in the days that followed his detention became just as important to prosecutors as the forensic evidence. His actions showed a complete lack of reflection about what had happened. Investigators learned that on Valentine's Day, Gareth had canceled plans with a new romantic interest, claiming he would be busy all week. But immediately after Amy's death, his schedule changed. On the morning of February 15th, just hours after Amy was thrown from the balcony, Purshouse contacted that same woman and reinstated their plans. While police were processing the crime scene, the offender went on a date. The pair spent the day actively, first visiting a shooting range, then riding bicycles together. His companion noticed fresh cuts and bruises on Gareth's face, signs of the victim's desperate resistance. He calmly explained them away as everyday accidents, raising no suspicion. That sense of normal life didn't last long. Around 4:30 p.m. the same day, a special response team arrested Purshouse. But even after being placed in county jail on charges of a first-degree crime, his behavior remained unchanged. In recorded phone calls with relatives, Gareth didn't discuss remorse or legal strategy. Instead, he gave instructions to sell his belongings to odd collectors, while public interest was high, and asked his brother to publish a book of his jokes. In another conversation, he told his brother to gather old notes from his Google Docs. Purshouse was seriously planning to release a joke book online, hoping to profit from attention surrounding the court case. Even the possibility of life in prison didn't alter his tone. In one call, Gareth joked about jail food and daily routines, boasting, "I got my abs back in just 1 week." While the Harwick family was preparing for a funeral, the offender was focused on fitness and future earnings. To reconstruct the events of the night of February 14th, detectives synchronized GPS data, remaining surveillance server logs, and witness statements. The resulting timeline revealed a chilling contrast. While Amy Harwick was enjoying the holiday in downtown Los Angeles, the trap inside her home had already been set. Amy's day unfolded exactly as planned. A morning hike, breakfast with her friend Cleo, and by 7 p.m., the group headed to the Globe Theater for a live performance. Around Amy's neck was the same beaded necklace that police would later find discarded on the floor of her home. At that very same time, Gareth Purshouse was driving 51 miles from his residence to the home of his former partner. He didn't approach the front entrance. Instead, he parked his car on an empty lot behind the property, beyond the backyard of the residence. At 8:51 p.m., a neighbor's security camera captured a man entering the property through the rear yard. One minute later, the footage cut out. The device had been disabled. At 8:52 p.m., a second Ring camera picked up a silhouette. Gareth shut that one down as well. At 8:53 p.m., a third camera went offline. Methodically, Purshouse plunged the entire perimeter into digital darkness, eliminating any electronic witnesses to his presence. At exactly 9 p.m., Michael Herman, already in bed on the lower floor, heard a sharp, ringing sound. To him, it sounded like a plate shattering upstairs. Assuming his neighbor had returned early and accidentally dropped something, he went back to sleep. In reality, there were no dishes, and Amy wasn't home. At that moment, she was still with friends, heading to the Nomad Hotel for tea, where she remained until midnight. The sound Michael heard was the crash of glass as the French doors to the third-floor balcony were broken. Gareth entered the empty house from above. He didn't search for valuables. He didn't steal anything. Instead, he walked into the bedroom, lay down on the bed on top of the bedspread, and remained perfectly still in the dark. With him was a syringe filled with liquid nicotine. Purshouse waited there for nearly 4 hours. At 1 a.m., Amy Harwick pulled into the driveway and entered her home. She had no idea that her bedroom had been occupied by an intruder for the past 4 hours. She locked the front door, removed her outerwear, and began walking up to the 3rd floor. The routine was familiar, her movements automatic. She stepped into her bedroom, where Gareth Pursehouse was waiting. The attack began instantly. Investigators determined that Pursehouse attempted to carry out his original plan, administering a lethal dose of nicotine. But the element of surprise didn't immobilize Amy. She fought back fiercely. Forensic specialists later found skin cells from the attacker under her fingernails, and deep scratches were documented on Gareth's face. Amy managed to knock the syringe from his hand. It fell to the floor, never fulfilling its intended purpose. With the quiet plan ruined, Pursehouse resorted to brute force. He began choking her. At that moment, the struggle moved to the floor. The sounds Michael later described as heavy bodies falling were caused by Gareth forcing Amy down, using his weight to overpower her resistance. Mechanical asphyxia led to her losing consciousness, or the ability to move. The final moments of the tragedy unfolded on the balcony. Gareth dragged Amy's body through the doorway. There were no marks on the railing suggesting an attempt to hold on. She was no longer able to defend herself. Pursehouse lifted her and threw her over the edge. Amy fell approximately 20 feet, striking the concrete surface of the backyard below. The offender didn't check the outcome of the fall. He left the scene the same way he had entered, disappearing into the darkness just minutes before police arrived. The trial in the case surrounding the crime against Amy Harwick began in September 2023. The defense built its strategy around the theory of a tragic accident. Gareth Purshouse's attorneys argued that the woman's fall from the balcony was an unintentional outcome of an emotional confrontation. They pointed out that the syringe filled with nicotine was never used, attempting to present this fact as evidence that the defendant ultimately abandoned any intent to commit a crime. Pursehouse himself exercised his right not to testify, declining to take the stand and avoiding cross-examination by the prosecution. The prosecution countered that narrative with a firm presentation of facts. Prosecutors focused heavily on the legal concept known as lying in wait. Investigators demonstrated that Gareth had entered the house in advance, systematically disabled security cameras, and spent 4 hours hidden in the darkness of the bedroom, waiting for the homeowner to return. The fact that he was carrying a lethal dose of poison was presented as proof of deliberate preparation, not a moment of emotional loss of control. On September 29, 2023, after reviewing all the evidence, the jury returned a verdict. Gareth Pursehouse was found guilty on all counts, including first-degree crime and burglary. The final chapter of the case was written on December 6, 2023. Taking into account the extreme cruelty and calculated nature of the offense, the judge sentenced the 45-year-old man to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Pursehouse, who had once worried during jail calls about selling his jokes, was permanently removed from society. The death of Amy Harwick carries a grim sense of irony. A doctor of psychology who dedicated her career to protecting women from aggression and teaching methods of self-support became a victim of the very scenario she warned others about. She used every tool available to her: court-issued restraining orders, deliberate non-engagement with her aggressor, and reinforced home security. Yet even professional expertise and the high walls of a guarded neighborhood were not enough to stop a person whose obsession had lasted for a decade. Amy is gone, leaving behind academic work and charitable initiatives that continue to make an impact even after her own voice fell silent.